department next Wednesday. It could be from 8 to 12, so if not next Friday, it'll probably be done. Yeah.
Good to see you, Chief. Morning.
Good morning. We're going to call our meeting to order, our work session to order. We will stand and have pledge of allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Blanton and prayer by Councilmember Reed. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would like to pray with us, would you please remain standing? Dear God, we thank you for this day, a day that you have made, a day that we should all rejoice and be glad in. We ask you on this day for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to make decisions on behalf of the city of Madison. We ask for in-depth recall and sight. Amen.
Amen. This is a work session topic for discussion, planning department study item, notice zoning, that's staff member.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I make, you have your work session and called minutes there in front of you for review to be placed on the regular agenda for September 14th, if that's okay. I just wanted to make a note that those are available for you this morning. on your
Okay,
desk.
thank you.
Good morning. We're going to let Bryce make the staff report this morning, but as a text amendment, I wanted just to do a brief review of it. So the purpose of us looking at a text amendment is to identify an alternative standard that might provide relief to the number of non-conforming properties that we have that were created in our 2005 raise in the minimum zoning standard for our single-family areas. We've had a number of people request relief in different forms, most likely in variance forms. Real close, okay, real close, how about that? So we've had a number of people request variances, which we're not encouraging as a relief valve because it provides a little bit of preferential treatment to specific properties. So instead of that being a subjective decision, we're looking at a method to make that more quantitative and more objective. And so hopefully today the data that we'll provide to you will answer the questions you asked at your last meeting.
Thank you, Monica. Members of the Mayor and Council, Mayor, just very briefly, this is primarily just a discussion of the maps. Just real quick, Ken, am I coming through okay on the, just let me know if I need to speak more into the mic, Ken. Just briefly, the 5 criteria we use for a property to be considered eligible under, and I'm just going to do a quick verbal run through of this, for the an alternative standard would be 300 feet within a specific intersection. So that was the starting point for the analysis. We only looked at R1 and R2 properties because that's sort of kind of the general discussion we've been having about those in general. We also considered for them to be eligible, any lot that split off would have to meet the other criteria. So for example, if a lot needed, let's say 75 feet of road frontage to still be legal, and it only had 50 when we split, it wouldn't be eligible under this nodal standard, this alternative standard, because this is only about lot size. So everything else, width, and things of that nature still have to be met. The alternative standard, if it came out, let's say, random example, at 0.3 acres, a split couldn't result in something less than 0.3 acres. And lastly, if an alternative standard came up that was less than a quarter acre, it wouldn't be eligible regardless, on the off chances. I wanted to kind of have those as guidelines. I will briefly mention, before I go into some of these maps here, briefly mention that at the bottom is a table, and these are all the intersections I did look at as possible candidates for this initial study. And based on my initial look-through, they either didn't have properties that would be considered eligible for a variety of reasons. It varies per intersection. So if something like this is applied, assuming this standard is used, all these intersections wouldn't be eligible. Additionally, we didn't look at any R4 intersection because R4 already allows a quarter acre. So this would be a moot point for that. So anyways, we'll briefly, I will touch on, start with Harris Street and College Drive. I put this as an example showing that even when we have a situation in which no lot is eligible, we could still have lots that may look like it at first glance, but it didn't generate one. It was just merely put in as a visual reference. You can understand that even when we do have lots that are less than half an acre in the area, it still may not cause that additional split situation. We have two from the historic district. We have Poplar and Lincoln Street and 4th Street and Hill Street, sort of both sides of the historic district if we use Main Street as a rough dividing line in half. Both of these have characteristics of having the smaller lot size. And again, it's fairly self-explanatory. A brief comment about maps, I made sure to include the total number of properties. That would be residential properties. Listed what ones had actual residents on them, so that's part of our calculation. And then we looked at half an acre size or less. I broke that out. When possible, I tried to find the mode. It probably would have more of a node generating, except I went 3 decimal places out. If we went 2 decimal places, we might have more frequent mode, but that's something we can clarify per other questions need be. And you'll note in red the median size, because what we looked at, we said, okay, if the median size is less than 5 acres, and of the lots that are less than 5 acres, pardon, they're less than 5 acres, that are less 5 acres, that's how the calculation was generated. From last meeting, we kept that standard. You'll notice that part of our discussion with the historic trend, that sort of fits that. We also took a look at, in the Canaan area, we took a look at MLK and where it met Billups, and we took a look at that, and that had some. I will, if you have a question specifically on any of these maps, feel free to toss them in. I will point out on the Billups map, there's that large lot where I only have one cutoff, because that actually can already split those two off, off that little loop down there already. And lastly, just I included North Main and Bowman Street, one, because it has the possibility of eligibility, and two, it'd be interesting to look at this and see how this would affect areas close to primary roads like North Main Street. As you'll note, it's also part of our DDA area as well. So, and that's another area, that part of town also has a lot of atypical lots. So, it's part of another reason I wanted to include it in the study. So, again, I think the maps are sort of what the meat of this is. So I think the most efficient thing is if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them and discuss anything you may have, questions you may have regarding it.
All right, so I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things if I can. So Bryce did a really good job with the maps. The check on intersections was not exhaustive, but it was pretty thorough. He looked at lots of different intersections, and we looked at both inside the historic district and outside the historic district so that we wouldn't get any concerns about we were only looking at one side of town or one specific kind of thing. I would point out that, let's start with the map for Hill Street. I want to make some things that are apparent. I think Ken's got that one up. Thank you. Nope, Ken, it's 4th and Hill. Okay, that doesn't match the one I'm looking at. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's
Yes,
it there.
okay, perfect. All right, so I wanted to kind of point us to Fourth and Hill to start with, because this is the map that kind of generated the discussion in the first place, a request for relief. The relief came in the form of a variance, and again, we're trying to find an alternative, more objective way to do that. So if you'll look at this map, what we're seeing inside the circle is that there are 2 affected properties. The number of non-conforming properties are all those lovely ones that Bryce put that little dot on. So you can see the cluster of non-conforming properties. This is not about, this text amendment should not be about whether somebody wants to divide a lot off or not. That's not the purpose of this text amendment. The impetus of this text amendment would be to provide an alternative standard based on the degree of nonconformity that's at a specific area. And so, and the only piece of nonconformity we're looking at is lot area. So in this instance, you'll see that there are 2 lots that are affected. One that has requested a split so that those houses can be sold independently. The other one, if you'll notice, is at the bottom. Ken, can you shiver up a little bit? And the reason Bryce included that is not because, it is because it's over 0.5 acres. And based on the acreage of the nonconformities in this area, it would be eligible for a split. So that addresses Councilmember Joyce's concern of, is it going to open up a domino effect? If we did an alternative standard or lowered the standard for the district, zoning district, as a whole, it would apply to all properties. This only applies to those within a 300-foot radius of an intersection where the nonconformity already exists. So it's based on existing historic pattern of development. I was grateful for Bryce including the one up on College, mainly because it is in our URA area, and I wanted people to see that opportunity that has already existed. Most of those lots were divided off while we were a third of an acre, College, Billups in that area. So you're not seeing a change in density because of the text amendment.
Quick question
Yes,
before you
sir.
move on from that one. I'm just interested in the potential influence from that intersection and that node to the 10.5 acres that I think the city or DDA one owns.
DDA owns that, yes, sir.
So would that influence then be folded into 10.5 acres?
It does apply to the 10.5 acres, but it only applies within the 300-foot radius circle. So it would only apply
Only that
potentially to
portion.
one lot, which already has the,
Okay, so that doesn't extend to the whole thing.
it doesn't extend to the whole thing.
Okay, that's a distinction that needs to be made.
I want him to confirm that with Bryce, so hang on while I turn around and look at him.
Well, I mean, that's depends on how you set the standards up. I mean, I'm just
Yes.
saying that,
I'm just confirming that's how he wrote it, so yes.
The other element, because of road frontage factors and all that, David, right now, the reason that's not indicated, that first tooth closest to the point, doesn't have enough width, so they could split it off legally currently and meet all our standards, but they couldn't get more than one lot. So there's some cases where you have larger lots like this where they could split off multiple lots under our current standard, but this wouldn't increase that opportunity. For them to really fully develop that 10-acre tract because of our road frontage requirement, they'd have to start talking about putting roads in, and we'd be talking
right,
about.
right. But I mean,
So-
that's the case, but you could have someone say, well, I'll put roads in, but if I get this density based on this nodal calculation, that's a different dynamic. You see what my distinction I'm
Yes,
making?
sir. Yes, sir. And
That
we'll
you're
be sure
folding
to-
that influence into a much larger, I mean, you could, I don't know that it exists in the city, but there could be even more extreme examples than that.
Okay, again, it's within the node.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And then, so the Poplar and Lincoln one, this was the one that caught my eyebrow because it's at the edge of Washington Street, and it does allow for 3 potential splits. And so we looked at this one pretty heavily. And I looked at it, and then I actually wondered why there was this open land, because if it's sitting there, it would have already been split off. So went and took a look at it. There's a couple reasons.
That's Ms.
Um,
Bone, ain't it?
The Bones property
Mhm.
has a ravine in the side yard that is deep and split. So the likelihood of that big ranch house having that side split is not high, but if it did, it would meet the requirement for a split. Surprisingly, yeah. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. I said the Bones, didn't I? Okay.
Well, the
so
Bones is next to
The
it.
Bones is next to it. The ravine still runs on that side, it's just not on the Bones property. Sorry, thank you, Ken. I did misspeak. The other one is at the corner. That lot historically would have been 2 lots if it was in the historic district development pattern, and the fact that it is eligible for a split requires an odd lot to be shaped to make it happen. Doesn't mean that it won't happen. There are people who do things like that. We certainly have seen that. You'll see with Terrell Gerard's flag lot back there that she did go with a weird shape to be able to put that into the historic district as well. And then the other one is the tiny, tiny one of the box houses that we have on Plum Street. But that actually was the surprising model. That's why we did a couple more in the historic district just to check. See-
Quick question, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
No,
the
please.
thought is a fleeting thought. You talked about the lot on the corner of Poplar and East Washington Street and backs up to Bearden Alley. Then why could it not just emulate the frontage lot on Washington Street? Was it a frontage requirement, or is it, I mean, why would you have to carve out an odd-shaped lot there?
All right, so remember that Bryce did a raw assessment based on lot area. He didn't go into all the other qualifications that a lot has to have. That's the minimum width on the street.
Frontage,
And
yeah,
we're looking
okay.
at a lot that already has a building on it. So there are setback requirements that are required before you could drop in a new lot line.
Okay,
So he didn't look at whether the existing building retained enough street frontage,
Okay.
and looked at where the setback on the side was gonna be that would squeeze the buildability of the lot on the side. We didn't go into all the minutia. There is a second level of quizzing on any split lot for buildability.
okay, thank you.
And David's question's a good one. Look at the tiny lot with the tiny house. That one is theoretically splittable, up at the .96225 acre, Ken. Bottom one, sorry. Bottom left. Yes, okay. So since the lot is .96225, that one house is able to be split off. It's not eligible for a new infill. So just because it's blue does not mean that's a new house in the area or a new infill opportunity. What it means is it is a new lot opportunity. We were looking at lot area, not looking at necessarily whether you would get a new house or not, okay?
I was about to ask that question. Thank you for talking about it, but because only part of it is in the 300-foot range, the same lot, there's no way anybody could ever build anything there. They don't have any way to get to it. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So it's Monica, it's eligible to be split as a lot,
It's
but
not,
not eligible to erect a second structure on it.
that's correct. And so I didn't want, what I like about this map is it shows you that, just like the first map you looked at, which has 2 houses on one lot that is looking at a split, it shows you where we could have a new lot of record. But it does not dive down into, could we have another building or not? It doesn't parse that out. And this is another example of, yes, there could be another lot, but realistically, there can't be another house. Any questions about that one? All right, and then the last one I wanted to go to is, well, actually, that might have been it, Poplar and Link. That was it. No, it was North Main and Bowman. So on North Main and Bowman, I really like that Bryce chose this intersection because it does show us the interface between a state highway and a traditional African-American cluster of resources that were built all at the same time. Or over a period of time, specifically on one side. So here we have the opportunity only for one lot split, but it already has a house on it. Again, that evidences that the alternative rule that could be used to provide relief for lot size does not necessarily correlate to a fear of an infill of an additional unit, okay? And we're happy to look at any other intersections, but we feel like these have provided the evidentiary nature that we needed to make sure that we weren't creating a spin-off of lots, but it does provide us an alternative form of relief instead of giving a variance and being very subjective about it. And Bryce will have to answer data questions, and I'll answer any policy questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Monica Bryce after the presentation this morning?
Yeah, let me ask a couple dumb questions if I could, so I can appear somewhat less dumb next time. If someone has an 1.5 acre lot in R1, and the house on that lot is situated in a way to allow all the setback requirements for a split, they can do that now without any action from this or from the council? Okay, so if someone has a 1.25 acre lot in R1, they would not be able to do that because the second lot would be under the 3/4 of an acre, is that correct? So these are
Yes,
going to
sir.
be exceptions to that
Yes, sir.
within these nodes to reflect more the existing pattern.
Yes, sir.
So we're kind of back to the putting the overarching zoning over pre-existing housing patterns. That same problem we've had many other times. One thing I was going to ask, would it not be helpful to indicate on these maps what zone you are located in?
I was trying to simplify the question to the size, but any future revisions, I'll be sure to keep that in mind and try to incorporate that, sir. But I was mainly focused on area, so.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to me whether
Yes,
we're
sir.
talking about R1 or R2. It kind of makes a difference when it comes to the legal requirements on the lot size.
Yes, sir.
So, just looking at these lots that you've picked here, it looks like about maybe 10 possibly new lots, some of which evidently aren't buildable. I'm not quite sure why anyone would want to split a lot off and to make a pasture out of it, but anyway. So it looks like about 10 lots according to the 5 that you've picked here. Is that kind of what we're talking about for this internodal program?
Well, a few things. One, this is to address where we've had these concerns crop up before, and reflects historic development. So that's the second point. The third thing to keep in mind is just because people are allowed to do something, they may or may not do that. Like the example we saw on the Lincoln Poplar. If I put an approximate line down just because I was indicating the area, obviously someone could adjust this and finagle it. But at the end of the day, is that person likely to split that? Probably not, because they don't even want their house to be relatively close to another property line. That's what I'm saying. So it just varies on needs and desires on that front.
I would offer to you, I think your number might be slightly high. What I see on my count is 3 houses and lots that would be lot splits for houses that are currently there, or that could be torn down and rebuilt if they met the standards. So I don't see 3 that are infill, and then 2 of those are splittable regardless of whether the overlay goes on it or not. So I see 5, not 10.
Okay.
And that's what I would offer.
All right,
And
thank you.
I want to clarify, this is not written to be an exception. It's written to be an alternative standard where nonconformities are in evidence.
So potentially there could be other nodes added to this you said it was thorough but not exhaustive, I believe.
Yes, it's not written where we're actually laying down the node. It's written down that the nodal alternative exists if you come in and ask us to analyze it and look at it. If you want us to look at every intersection, we will. But based on the ones that Bryce has looked at and the ones that you're reviewing today in a map form, we don't think that's necessary because we really don't think that this is going to create tons and tons of lots. We think what it does is provide relief to nonconformity.
I have one question, please. On the Poplar Street, Lincoln Street map, where you talked about the potential for an odd-shaped lot on the Bearden Alley.
Yes, sir, I just
Corner.
needed to switch to it. Yes, sir.
And part of what could be a lot split is outside of the 300-foot radius.
Yes, sir, okay. So if the lot is in, then you can create a new lot with the portion, the lot, let me try to explain that. So if you have a new lot, the new lot can extend beyond the 300 feet, but to be able to meet the requirements to qualify for it in the first place, it has to be within the 300 feet.
And the reason that qualifies for it is
Yes.
because of the road frontage and,
That's right. So if this lot right here, let's say that this lot is bigger than what we're seeing. Let's say it's bigger than .69. If they wanted to make an out parcel that was .4, they can make it bigger and creep outside that circle. There's no downside to them making it bigger.
I see.
But only if your land touches inside the circle does it qualify for that initial split evaluation in the first place.
But
Does
on
that
the-
help?
yes, but, and just to be, for clarity on my end, the one on my bottom left that we talked about, that even though it was in the circle, it couldn't be done.
No,
Uh,
okay, so maybe I misspoke, or maybe we didn't.
I probably misheard.
That's okay, we might not have
misunderstood.
communicated well on that one. So the one in the bottom left, the lot can be split off, but it doesn't cause a infill of another residence, nor can the bottom part that has 3 get this relief.
Right.
Because the bottom 3 can't get the relief, because to get the relief, their lot is in, so they would qualify for us to look at them, but the new lot created is outside the circle. So
Right.
it could not be.
Additionally, those 3 houses, the way they're spaced, are too close to qualify for road frontage as well.
Right, but that is a secondary check. They don't pass the first check.
I think you're gonna find that in almost all the intersections, they're not gonna have the road frontage.
I will.
Yes. This is regarding those 3 smaller houses. I actually did a quick check just on my curiosity, and I'll confess on that one, and they wouldn't have enough road frontage. And that is another factor, sir, regarding your question. Not every lot that may qualify for area may qualify for other factors. So this is only an exemption to recognize size. Alternative standard, thank you. This is an alternative standard regarding size only. This is not an alternative standard for any other aspect of the zoning
Right.
ordinance. So even like an R2 lot, they're still gonna have to have 100 foot of road width, or 100 foot of lot width, sorry, not road width, for example, where the building sits, and they have to basically draw a 100-foot line. I mean, that's just what we've got, and that's in the zoning ordinance. So this will not, it's a limitation on that front.
So if you decide that you are ready for it to go to the Planning Commission, one of my takeaways from this morning that would be helpful is we might color code the blue areas, 2 different colors, maybe a yellow and a blue, to indicate one that could be an infill opportunity, or versus just a lot split opportunity. And that way, someone counting to 5, or Eric's concern specifically that he saw, would maybe be a little clearer to the public, and maybe not as fearful for them, or perhaps even more informative for the Planning Commission to look at the degree of nonconformity relief that's being provided. I'll remind you that all of this kind of echoes the general provision in our ordinance that lot area and lot width are not, they're grandfathered. They're not supposed to get variances. Those are the two that are out there. That's why we're looking at an alternative standard. All the other things, the dimensions of buildability that make a lot buildable, are still eligible for a variance even on a non-conforming lot. These 2 factors, lot area and lot width, are not supposed to be eligible for a variance. And so that's why we're looking at an alternative standard, given the, going from .33 to .75 in some areas, or even going from .18 up to .75 in some areas, has caused a little bit of concern at some of our denser nodes that were historically developed. So anyway, more answers when you want them.
when I look at this specific case that kind of started all this, I mean, there's certainly a logic to when a property has two houses on it, on the same property. To split that, it is not going to increase population density. It's already there. It's not going to increase house density. It will increase lot density marginally because you've got one extra lot. But I'm a little more concerned about all the other properties that would be affected by that, because you will be, with these lots splits, you will be increasing density both in terms of housing and in population. And is there any way, I mean, I look at them two differently, but yet they're all kind of combined together in this nodal plan. Is it unfair to look at those in a different way?
I don't know. I think it depends on your stance. Over a 20-year history with the city of Madison, it's never been an anti-growth community. It's been a smart growth community. I think it depends on what your definition of smart growth is. When we have evidence of small lots and trying to reflect the history of that area, I think that's a little bit different, just like when we have evidence of large historic lots in one area. That was the impetus of the 2005 rewrite, was we were trying to, places like, it literally came out of the Cedar Lakes scenario. People were no longer following the 1 acre model, and they were moved down to a third of an acre, which was the lower minimum, it was the minimum standard. And we wanted people to reflect the lot size that it was. What we didn't do was customize it enough in certain areas to reflect the lot size that was. We just did a little bit more ubiquitous broad brush. And so I think what you're seeing today is some people might characterize it as rollback, some people might see it as a customization. I don't see it as a growth move, but I'm not sure that the anti-growth people would agree with that. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
Monica, on the Martin Luther King Drive and Billups Avenue map,
yes, ma'am, I've got that one up.
so where the two possible infields are, is it just one that can be split because it's only one that's inside?
Yes, so this is one that would benefit from, my takeaway from Eric here is that, or Councilmember Joyce, sorry, is that the one that's on the .780772 lot,
Right.
that would be a new lot.
Okay.
And the one on the 2.07, that's eligible for subdivide now.
Okay.
And so even though, and actually maybe that's 3 colors, because that is eligible for subdivision right now under the ordinance. The only difference is it would get to reflect the lot size of what's in the area as opposed to being forced to a higher standard.
Right. Okay.
I think the color coding, that'll show if it's
Right.
already, if it can now, or if it could but not be buildable, or could be buildable, would be very helpful.
Okay,
Okay,
so
I
we'll
agree.
take that and do, could it be split now under the current ordinance?
Right.
And it would be able to be split smaller, so that's one color. Whether it is just a lot split with no new house rooftop infill, and then is it a new lot that could create the opportunity for a new rooftop? We'll color code those, and we'll add a couple intersections if you like. If you've got one in mind, if you'll share it with Bryce, we'll add that to the pile. Maybe limit it to 3 or 4, please.
Does, in the area that Carrie's referring to here, does the ordinance change we passed for Mr. Peters play any relationship to what we're looking at here?
It does a little bit, but it gives more relief for both lot width and lot area. It helps more on areas where we have a streetscape as opposed to an intersection.
I think it was related to one block, was it not?
Yes, sir, and it's an administrative variance, and we're trying real hard to honor David's request to make it just a quantitative thing as much as possible.
Monica, we appreciate you and Bryce working on this for us.
Most of the credit goes to Bryce. He did all the work.
Thank you, Bryce.
Yes, thank you.
Again, I'll remind you as you finish this item, if you have any other intersections you'd like included, if you would please just relay those to David via email, and then we'll get those and we'll add those to our pile. But I do feel like we need either enough head nods to send it for consideration or not for consideration to the Planning Commission. And again, that does not mean it'll be approved, and it doesn't mean that they won't recommend alternatives or a change to it in some way, and by the time it gets back to y'all, it may end up in a different form. But I want to hear from you as a staff person, because we don't have a dog in this fight. This is just an exercise for us. So if you want it to go forward, please tell me, and then, or tell David, and David will tell me.
Well, I think the council members instructed y'all to go ahead to do this, to bring this back to us with the study. And I would like to see the council put on our consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just remind you that since it's a zoning text amendment, we'll have to go through advertisement and send it
Okay.
to the Planning Commission first. It can come back to you after that.
Okay. Well, can we get a nod for Monica to go ahead? Okay.
All right, and we'll brief you, make sure to take careful notes at the Planning Commission meeting in case there's more information that we need to share early, in case you need us to do more studies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Thank
Bryce.
you.
Fiscal year 2020 budget amendment, Karen?
Yes, sir. This is a year-end budget amendment for fiscal year 2020. The main increases are additional expenses for trails, also COVID-19 supplies, changing the status of a part-time firefighter to full-time, a striping grant and expenditures, as well as a land purchase for the airport expansion. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do the numbers here reflect differences from the budget we passed, or are they, I mean, like, for example, the $1,200 for printing and binding, is that in addition to what was in the old budget, or is that the new budget number?
Correct. So you have a summary page, and then behind your summary is the actual line item budget that shows the original adopted budget, and then what is being amended in this budget amendment.
So when I look at the $1,200, that's the total?
No,
For
sir.
the
No, sir,
budget?
that's the increase.
That's the increase, okay. Could you explain what is the $6,000 under tourism for no regret events rental agreement?
That is where No Regret Events was in the cottage at Town Park. And when it was under DDA, they had an agreement and a lease that we were to pay them $650 a month for basically maintaining and opening and closing the Town Park restrooms. As well, David, was there anything else included in that?
No, I think that's
Okay.
it.
Since then, they have, of course, vacated the cottage, but we did have a little bit of expense and monthly expenses for those.
So wait a minute. You're saying we did not pay them the $600 a month for 10 months?
We did. That's what the increase is, because we originally didn't have anything budgeted for that. So this is increasing that line item to cover the expenses that were paid out to no regret events.
So, oh boy.
Just
I'm a little
just
confused
point
on
of
that now.
Point of clarification, I don't know how
Yes.
they work the numbers, and I don't know why the money wasn't in the budget, because we've been doing this for several years, since the cottage was open, not since it was open, because the Artists Guild was down there for a while. But since No Regrets was down there, we were swapping checks. She was paying us and we were paying her. We were just, it was a net zero.
Yeah, so why does the $6,000 pop up at
That-
this point?
That's a Karen question.
That, before DDA, because it was in DDA's possession, it all ran
Okay.
through DDA.
Okay, it was a
And
DDA
then now that
issue.
the city took over Town
Okay.
Park.
It just didn't get
then
in
it
our
had to go
budget.
through- Right.
Okay. Okay.
But she was still writing the checks.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah,
It
we
was a
were,
swap
she
off.
was writing a
It's
check
still
and we
a
were
swap,
writing a
It
check.
was, yeah, swap off.
This is why 2 years ago I pushed for timed locks on that building, because this is a terrible deal, and has been for a long time. And I thought we were done with it, and here we are.
And we are done with it.
Another
This is last
$6,000
year's,
done
this
with
is
it.
last year's budget. This is not this year's budget. This is money that's already done. This is cleaning up. Karen, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, this is for last year. Fiscal, this
These are
is
the
a
final budget amendments for last
year-end
year.
budget amendment for me to be able to close the books in the next week for last year, fiscal year 2020. So the no regrets events, they're not in the cottage anymore, so this is not in this New Year's budget. We
What-
don't have this
So-
expense anymore.
Just as a reminder, we have a paying customer coming into the
Right,
cottage.
right. That's the difference, yeah.
We're not swapping money anymore.
Right.
They're paying
Correct.
a agreed upon lease amount.
That's right.
And I mean, it's a good deal for everybody. We have a presence down there, and they're paying money for it, and we're paying all utilities because the majority of the utilities for that building are on the restrooms, which are heated and cooled no matter when they're open.
Right.
So, having a presence down there is worth something. But that
Well, so-
arrangement is done, the old arrangement is
It's a
done.
win-win for the city now, because we are receiving revenues from that building now, where in the past, we were not receiving any revenues.
It was
from.
it net zero.
Right, just a swap out.
Correct.
You remember, we couldn't make that transfer from the DDA to the city. We had to hold back for a certain period of time longer.
Well, until the debt was paid off,
Right, we had to wait until that was paid off.
and then the transfer has been done.
Are there any more questions for Karen? If we can put this on our consent agenda for approval?
It cannot be on the consent agenda because there has to be a public hearing
Okay.
at the meeting on September 14th.
Are there any more questions, Karen? Okay, thanks, Karen. In-person mayor and council meetings. And we don't know how long this pandemic's gonna last. But I would like to recommend to the council, since we are having to wear masks, and since several city employees have been affected by this COVID-19, that we would just forego in-person meeting in our council until the first of the year. And continue live streaming as we're doing now.
So, staff and council and mayor meeting, but
Right.
not allowing
No
public
public,
to
right.
attend.
I missed, I was unable to attend your last meeting when you passed the mask ordinance, which I fully support. But I had the chance to view most of that meeting on the live stream. That's the first time I've done that. Has anyone else seen any of the meetings on live stream?
I have.
You have?
The one I missed.
Maybe you could give me your comments. I mean, I thought it went relatively well. You could follow it. You might as well get rid of the video, the one camera. I mean, I'm not even sure it would pick up some of the charts, some of the maps we just showed, for example, for someone in the public. But you could hear it pretty well as long as people remembered to speak into their mics. And I got the gist of the meeting pretty well. But I'm not sure that format really rose to the standard that we might need for public meetings for zoning ordinances. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, our next council meeting on the 14th, we're going to have another zoning variance request, I believe. That was a concern I had. Rick, would you have any comments along those lines?
Well, in terms of when I was out sick and couldn't come, I watched it, and I could hear, except for unless, like you said, somebody didn't have a microphone, and it's easy. I think we fixed that today. It's easy when you're interacting for somebody to speak without a microphone, but we we asked Bryce to repeat what he said and,
Speak up.
and, you know, that kind of thing. So I have a little different, I mean, with all due respect, Mayor, I feel like, just my feelings is, you know, I wouldn't have a problem with, we have staff here and ourselves here with the socially distant seating. There's not a lot of room for very many people. But
Mr. Mayor,
If it's-
I think it could be done safely, but that's just my point of view in terms of having people here.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Rick somewhat. I think that if we could limit the people properly, and I think personally that they'd have to make a call and say they'd like to be on the agenda, and you limit it to just a certain number of people that can come in, not everybody, but if somebody wants to speak for or against. Jimmy, I'm sorry.
If this is of any importance as far as the legality of a zoning hearing, the only people that are really allowed to speak in a zoning hearing are the people who come in during a limited time and support. You know, you get a staff report, people come in in support of that are signed in, so you would just have one or two people in there offering support. People that would come in opposition, those are the only people that are really supposed to be allowed to speak at a zoning hearing. Calling a meeting open for the audience out there after you've had the hearing is simply not something that's in our procedure. So
So,
whether the general public in general is here at a zoning hearing, as long as they can hear what's going on, the idea of an open meeting is for the voter to hear what the council is doing, so that next election, they can decide whether they support those people or not. So as long as it goes out to the public, it's public. And as long as people who are going to come in and support in the 10 or 15 minutes that we allow, that's the only people that count as far as our procedure is concerned in giving input to make a decision.
so Jim, when those principles you're talking about to the specific zoning case, would their input through the live streaming that we do, is that sufficient in your mind?
I would say that we would be perfectly safe if they came in a mask and were allowed to speak to the council, to address the council here. So to limit them to say, okay, the people that are actually going to speak within the 10 or 15 minutes would be here live, but nobody else. You see what, am I making myself clear? That is illegal. I'm not saying that's what y'all might decide to do, but I'm just saying that I would endorse that procedure from a legal standpoint, because everybody that the procedure allows to speak can be here. And if they want to be in a waiting room or somewhere else and come in one at a time, whatever. But that would be a legal zoning meeting with
That's what I
live
was
streaming to the
suggesting.
public.
Jimmy, because they're not here to persuade the public of their opinions. They're
Right.
here to express their opinions to us as the
That's
council.
right.
Absolutely.
And so,
That's right.
and if we're live streaming and they come in, the public can hear it. And by just limiting the numbers,
Right.
and I think, Eric, I think you're right. I think it's, they need to be able to come in and talk. And but just for that reason, I don't think we have to have open meetings. I mean, we have open meetings when we live stream, but
Right.
we don't have something like a zoning or something like that the public gets good input to. I do think they need to be personally here.
I would agree with that. I think Rick's kind of on the same line. As much as I want to protect ourselves and everybody else from COVID, it's a difficult balancing, because I don't think the way we're doing live streams is really going to be sufficient in my mind for some of these public hearings. All the city commissions, by the way, do go to meetings. I mean, I've sat in on a bunch of those. I think they're great. I mean, Ed's done a bunch with DDA. You don't have to wear masks because you're at home. You can see the faces of the people that are talking. Ken's able to put up documents on your screen. I think it's a great format. It does require people having computers, but there are people, I think once David was at a meeting, and for some reason, David's work computer, we didn't give him a camera, but he was able to see what was going on and then call in on the phone. I personally think that's a really good way of doing it, but short of that, I would agree with the comments to maybe get the principals involved. Certainly in a zoning hearing allowed in the room would be my feeling, Mr.
Right.
Mayor.
And we could require a sign-in previously, so that,
Mhm.
you know, if one person talks and uses up all the time, the rest of them don't get to say anything.
And that rule's in place generally, even without the COVID restrictions. so.
Absolutely.
Ken?
And this is, applies to COVID and post-COVID. Next week, we're getting in a piece of equipment that will be able to switch the live streaming to see full screen what is being shown here. So we'll be able to toggle back and forth and actually do picture-in-a-picture. Eventually, we hope to get at least one more camera so that when we're live streaming with public here, that we can have a camera on any member of the public who comes to the podium speaking. So we're slowly acquiring technical equipment without breaking the budget.
And may I say that, right now, all jury trials are, put off until at least the end of this year. And I am having a Zoom meeting, I got on blue jeans underneath here, so I'm fake, but I'm having a huge Zoom meeting, and I've got to leave here about 9:25. I've mentioned that to David, but that hearing is all gonna be remote. I've had remote hearings, in cases ever since March, when the, March 14th Supreme Court order came out. We are in the 5th extension of the Supreme Court order now for jury trials and so forth, and nobody's having them. And the only thing that is going on in a criminal calendar, for example, is criminals are being brought into the courtrooms one at a time. But the rest of us, all the public, all the other lawyers waiting for the calendar call, are in waiting rooms on Zoom. So it's very accepted. If it works for the court, it certainly works for these procedures.
I agree.
And all our GMA meetings are on Zoom as well. No personal, no in-house personal meetings, you know.
Yeah, I believe if we really get this perfected and get it going like it can go, the public will probably use that as an alternative in the future anyway, because they get home, especially our evening meetings, stuff like that.
And everything's got to have a glitch. The other day, I was in a hearing, it was an uncontested name change for a kid I was just doing for charity. But when Judge Benton tried to get on, we could see him and he could hear us, we couldn't hear him. So I said, Judge, this is basically an uncontested. I said, can you hear me? And he nods, you know. So we went through the hearing, and he was giving thumbs up on this and that and the other, and couldn't even hear us, but we were able to work it out, and it was perfectly legal. He took the evidence, later signed the order, and so despite some types of glitches, we're gonna be able to get through.
If I could have gotten $1 for every time I heard, you need to unmute, I'd be a rich man right now.
Right.
Well, I'll take that over asking people to mute when they've got everything in the world in the background.
Going, yeah.
Music and
Yeah.
dogs
You got your
barking and
telephone
children
on,
screaming
just
and
Dogs and
so
lawnmowers.
we're learning a lot about,
The world is
Video
changing,
etiquette.
so we just need to be receptive to what's going on.
Right.
So the world is slowly changing, and it might not go back to what we consider normal. So we do only have one camera now, but as Ken said, you know, this is definitely not a race for the swift. It's a marathon.
Out of respect for David, I'm not ever gonna use the term new normal again, because he said he
Right.
never wanted to hear that.
That's right. I mean, We need to be receptive to what's going on, so.
If y'all will excuse me, I've got to go to this hearing.
Yes, sir.
The other thing I wanted to let you know, though, is I've looked at every single attachment and reviewed them all and approved them and worked with David on them. So all the legal stuff that's gonna go on in the meeting is pre-approved and reviewed by David and me.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll also say this, I'm gonna have my computer on. If a question comes up, just either email me or text me during the meeting. And I thank y'all. It is so nice to come into a governmental body that's working for the good of our community. It just is a pleasure. And I'm sorry I've got to run. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thank you.
So is it the wish of this council then to just not have in-person, and maybe just if we got a zoning meeting or something like that, just have those who are representing to come in?
That's a yes for me.
Yes, for me.
I mean, we can't vote on it. You know.
I know, I'm just.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps can we leave it a bit more open that if someone has it could be an issue other than zoning, because it rarely happens that someone needs to come in, but.
If somebody wants to address the
If somebody wants to
council
address the council for a reason.
in general.
Right.
In general, then
Right.
we'll
maybe we'll be-
bring it to you and let you make the decision at that time and limit it. And I don't know that there'd be any more exposure than a zoning hearing. So I just want to leave it open
Okay.
to that.
Committee appointments, I think we talked in our last work session, the last council meeting, concerning our police department and coming up with the package deal for them. And I'd like to appoint a committee to work with our city manager and maybe work with our chief to see what we could come up with our police department. And this committee will bring the findings back to our council. And I'd like to appoint Councilmember Rick Blanton and Councilmember Chris Hodges to work with our city manager and our chief on this to bring us
Mr. Mayor, respectfully, can I request that we broaden that to include, not the police, it is a unique group, and there are specific needs for that, but I would like to broaden that whole conversation citywide.
citywide.
Because we're in the middle of, and perhaps at the next council meeting, we may have, and I don't want to bring ideas or changes to the council without some places call them fiscal notes, they call them different things, but what that does to the bottom line, I mean, you have budget, we all want to do right by every employee, and we want to be as good a workplace, benefits, salary, work, environment, the whole thing. But we've got to look at what any changes would do year to year or over time, and I would like for that committee to look at
Citywide.
citywide.
Okay.
And maybe, individual departments like the police department that may have we may have different ideas, and because it is unique, but the same could be true for others, so if that would be okay.
And I'd also like to add financial person Karen to work with this committee.
Okay. And we may call in staff as needed. Betsy, Phil, y'all will have to be involved to a certain extent.
Anything else to come before our work session this morning? This is not on our agenda, but Ed and I, because the city manager has been involved at some point with our chief and our sheriff, and we contemplated on getting a precinct over at the middle school, just to have a presence there, not all day.
Mr. Mayor.
Not all day, not every day, but maybe 20 minutes, just periodically throughout the week, just to have a presence there. Since we do have the GMC College there, the Boys and Girls Club is there, and I understand this week someone broke into the food giveaway last week, you know, and just I think they see a presence there with the sheriff department, police department. I think it'll make a difference in our area.
Could we ask the chief to get your opinion there, Bill? If you come talk to us a little bit, tell us what you think.
We did talk about this, myself and David Nunn and some. Yes, sir. And the mayor, met over there at the school, and, I have no objections to it. However, you know, my concern, as I've expressed to the mayor, is that our short-handedness now. It takes, 8 uniformed police officers for us just to cover our normal shifts, and we only have 6. Our guys are working overtime, but to be honest, the next month, they're not signing up to work overtime because they're getting burned out. My investigators and my assistant chief are actually covering some midnight shifts right now just to make sure that the city is covered. So that would be my concern. If there's any type of obligation that the city is looking for us to have someone over there, that may be difficult.
Mr. Mayor, I did talk with Robert about this. I called and talked to Robert Markley about it, and he feels pretty much the same way. And Bill, I don't think it requires anybody being over there. I think it's just the car parked outside maybe every once in a while, go in and fill out a report. And Robert doesn't want to do that either, but he had some very good, you know, we have between black community and police officers, there's oftentimes a fear of them, and he wants to kind of be a presence in the neighborhood over there, just for that, just to keep that we've got pretty good relations between the black community, white community, and the police department, I think, Carrie. But this would enhance it more with.
I would go back to when we wanted protection in the housing authority. And we wanted the housing authority to pay the policemen or the deputies themselves. So I kind of feel like GMC, the community giveaway, food giveaway, and whoever is there on that property could also help with maybe paying a police officer or a deputy to come and sit. And then just having the presence. If we just have a presence in the community where the police is just ride through more, that will help. You don't have to pretty much, I wouldn't say sit all the time. If you just ride through, what Derek does when he was on duty in the housing authority, he literally would park his car, but he would get out and walk. So at this point right now with Lieutenant Reed, he's not on the road anymore. They walk up to him. I don't care where we are. Kids, adults have a relationship with him where they're not afraid. So if we kind of just let them just ride through, maybe walk through or whatever, just to be around and just be seen more, it probably would be better. But I think that GMC and the food bank should hire someone if we really need someone to sit, because the housing authority had to pay.
Well, again, my concern there would be having the personnel to be hired off duty because, again, they're working overtime just to cover our shifts, and you know, the money's good at times, but just to be honest, they get burned out, and they're to that point.
Or maybe hire a security guard that's on the property.
Well, just something we could take a look at. We know we're short.
Short
The
staff.
city is
So
short
I
staffed.
wonder what, if they broke in there, what did they do? They gorged themselves on apples and fruit and vegetables? I mean, goodness gracious, they gotta know what it is. It's nothing in there to
Nothing in
steal.
there but food, you know, yeah.
So-
Like, I guess they gotta,
Well, David, they've been going in all that building.
Well, I mean, that was predictable.
Right, I understand. I'm just
That's-
saying, they've
that's-
been going in the building,
That is
all
the
those dang keys.
vacancy, I mean, there was a degree of respect for the school. When the school was there, they were in the neighborhood, the kids went to school there, but vacancy for any type of institutional building is going to invite, trespassing and breaking and entering and whatever else. It's just an adjustment.
Yeah, we're getting the locks changed and everything else. There was probably 2,000 keys floating around the community.
No doubt.
Lots of keys, and then we don't know exactly who broke into the building and what they were actually seeking. It could,
Well, for sure, we can add patrols in the area, which,
Yes.
as Kerry said, it
Just right
definitely is
through.
a deterrent to see law enforcement, and we were asked to do that a while back, and we were requiring our guys to spend, a certain amount of time over in that area just to be seen, and it definitely is a deterrent, so we'll get that back on our roster and be sure that we have extra patrols around the school area.
Thank you, sir. Is there anything else to come before this work session?
Just one thing, Mr. Mayor, can I get clarification on what will the policy be for our next council meeting on the 14th in terms of the public accessing this room or not? We kind of talked about it, but I'm not sure if we ever made anything definitive. We do have a meeting on the 14th, and as I said, I'm pretty sure a variance request will be coming in on a side setback. I'd like to know if we could make a decision today, what the policy will be, so Ken can post it properly on the website.
And I guess if you said, you know for sure it's gonna be a variance, someone is gonna?
I believe so, because they came before planning and zoning, and usually Ashley probably would know.
Yes, sir. I got a request from Bryce Jack yesterday when I sent out agenda items, and
talk a little bit closer, please, Ashley.
he said that, I believe on the 14th, there will be a dimensional variance from section 700, table 11 for 955 Lakeview Drive. So that will take place at the next regular meeting on the
Okay.
14th.
And I do think we said that those who want in favor or against could come, the person who's asking for the setback.
Up to the capacity of the room to be safely distanced.
And I think that's what, 12, Ashley? Well, it won't be with our staff, it won't be because we have staff
Yeah,
in here as well.
It'd be 10 or
But,
12
but
people max.
if a variance generates that many, and it might, I've worked here a long time, it surprises me sometimes, but other people can wait outside or in the
I
lobby and
thought that's
call
what
in.
we,
Well,
they
even,
can
even,
sign up to talk, but they'll wait out there and come in only for that hearing. That's kind of thought. that's
I
what
was
we
just,
thought.
I was just trying to get some definition of what the terms will be. At a minimum, David, the applicant, I would assume, would want to speak as well. And I really don't think the live streaming gives them
No,
fit-
the applicant would
a chance to
definitely-
really make their presentations. Not to mention people might be opposed to it, but the applicant alone wouldn't have a good chance. So I just would like to know so we can post it properly for the public. It's
Yeah.
only 10 days away.
All right.
Yeah, and the applicant will be able to come in,
Yes.
yeah.
And we can,
Okay.
we're still having call-in, aren't we?
Yeah, we still haven't called in, yeah.
Yes.
So, anybody that would like to speak regarding the zoning or any other, if they'd like to address the mayor and council, I think is what I understood, we would allow them to come
Allow
in
them to come in.
and for that
Well,
portion of the meeting
yeah.
and
And leave.
be able to speak directly
Right.
if they wish, and if not, they can call in through the online meeting and phone system.
Sounds great, thank you.
Good. No more work session? We'll go directly into our call meeting. We've already had an open meeting this morning, so we'll go to our legal matters. Contract with Carter and Slope, Indian Creek. David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, the contract is, it's Carter and Sloop put this together. There are engineers for the Indian Creek Water Reclamation Facility copper removal system. This project has been bid. The contractor's ready to go. This is the contract document. The legal part that is specific to this project, what you were sent to review and what the attorney reviewed and approved in form is just the center part of this document. The rest is boilerplate, certificates and certifications and copies and specs for the project. So the meat of it, the part that you're acting on the full contract for this project. Again, it was bid. I should know the amount.
233,000?
What's that?
233,000.
Thank you.
898?
233,000 and some change.
233,898.
And earlier you voted on awarding the contract. So this is kind of a two-step process. I'm just asking that you approve this monster.
Right.
I'll answer any questions if I can.
And I think our attorney said he had reviewed it, is that right?
Attorney has reviewed it, yes.
We can get a motion and a second from our council.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, if none, vote unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes. Contract addendum, Madison Morgan Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Since Jimmy, Mr. Mayor, since Jimmy is not here, the attorney's not here, I will address the contract.
Okay,
All right, well, this is an addendum to the CVB contract that addresses the agreement to only allocate the $22,000 for joint advertising for fiscal year 2021, and for the CVB to carry over any unspent funds due to COVID-19. Once the pandemic is under control and the hotel industry does come back and recovers, that this addendum will no longer be in effect, and we will revert back to the original contract.
okay, so it looks like you just started cleaning this up a little bit.
I am.
Yeah.
This is to make us compliant in what we agreed upon and are currently operating as.
And we had mentioned this in previous meetings where
Right.
they haven't been able to
Yes.
spend
Spend the money.
or made a decision not to because it wouldn't have been effective.
Correct.
And didn't want to be out of
Which was.
compliance with the contract. So this addendum will
Correct,
clear
and
that
so this is just addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, like I said, we'll revert back to the original contract when everything starts to recover and they gain their ground a little bit more.
Okay, we can get a motion to approve this addendum.
Yeah,
So
Mr.
moved.
Mayor, I move to approve the emergency addendum for the CVB as presented.
second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, if none, vote unanimously. Contract with Charles Harris Concrete Construction Agreement. Mr. Nunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have our standard construction agreement before you. You recognize this form. You've used it many, many times. This was duly advertised. It is a bit unique in that it is an annual contract. I've discussed this with the council. This is an approach we're going to try to get some of our concrete works, our flat work, sidewalks, curb and gutter, maybe some repairs done. Mr. Harris, along with Mr. Ward and Mr. Little, Mr. Harris is carrying this agreement in his name, but they work, my understanding is kind of a consortium of individuals who have decades of experience in concrete work. Some of their handiwork's up in Lambert Park. They did all the flat work and all the walkways and whatnot up there for that, and did a nice job
It's
with
nice.
it. And I approached them and asked if they would be willing to try this. again, you'll see in Exhibit A, a description of the kind of work, this general description of forming and pouring and finishing concrete. This arrangement also, but it does allow for and does require that city staff or city forces help with some of these things, like filling an area that the sidewalk where the grade is not correct, or putting in pipe or other infrastructure, or perhaps moving utilities or taking out a tree. If we contract this thing out to a general contractor, and we've experienced very high prices for sidewalk projects, they would be required to do most of that. This is kind of a cooperative effort. This is taking advantage of local skill for a known price so that we can take down a certain section of sidewalk. All material costs are on the city. We'll pay for all the concrete, form boards, anything else, gravel, any other material. The $2 per square foot for flat work, $2.25 per square foot for flat work, $9 per linear foot for curb and gutter. I've run some numbers on that. That will work great for us. I mean, it's good prices, good fair prices. And we're gonna, if you see fit to approve this, we're gonna figure out a place to start and get us some sidewalk in, and then go from there. The other thing it does is it offers flexibility for us, for them. If they've got a period of time, if I say, well, I got 300 feet of sidewalk I need to put in, I'll get it ready, put it in your schedule, and then we'll get going on it, and they will form it, pour it, and finish it, and then clean it up. So I'll answer any questions.
They do great work. They did the Martin Tot lot over
Yeah,
on White House Street. They did an excellent job over there. In Lambert Park, they did an excellent job in
Yeah,
Lambert
Lambert Park
as
is
well.
really nice.
Yeah. So,
And Mayor, I want to commend our city manager for really thinking out of the box on this program. Even if it doesn't work all that well, we really are no worse off than we are right now, where we can't find vendors willing to do our this kind of concrete work. So I think it's real smart of David to come up with kind of a unique way of looking at that, and hopefully it'll work well for the city.
Well, it's a contractor's market right now. The construction industry is really going a lot. Whether it's the pavers, concrete guys, construction, it's the prices are pretty high. And again, this again allows for local forces of flexibility at a known price. So we're gonna give this a shot and see. I'm hopeful that we can do this going forward.
I think it's going to work out, and I'm glad they're local too. So
I am
yes,
also.
yeah.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
I think that was well done.
Right.
And
Well
we'll
done.
see, this is good, first part of it. If you'll approve the construction agreement, we'll move forward, and we'll negotiate every job going forward. They'll just invoice us for the work. It's a straightforward,
So we
simple agreement.
If we could get a motion to approve the contract with Charles Harris Concrete.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, to vote unanimously. Grant writing agreement for the city's 2021 CDBG project.
Chief, forget.
Mr. Mayor, this request was sent by Planning Director Callahan. She said is the CDBG agreement for the grant administration for, and would ask that it be added as soon as possible. So I did that, and she said it's going to be a process, so they need all the time they get, so that's why she requested it be added to the agenda today.
Just an update, that is grant writer for the Boys and Girls Club. We've agreed to, the DDA has agreed to work with them and help them write this agreement so they can improve the facilities that they're taking over. We're paying this $10,000 from the DDA up front. Once it's completed, we'll get our money back. It's just a process. We got to get it moving so we can get into the next cycle. And this lady that was chosen has written these grants for Boys and Girls Clubs in the past at other locations, and very qualified, and it's going to expedite the process, and that's the reason for this.
Okay.
So we're fronting $10,000, and then she recoups that through a percentage of the contract, the grant,
She doesn't. We'll get our $10,000 back.
through the grant.
Yeah.
This isn't the same group that did the past work.
I don't
Is it
know.
No.
the man and wife team, I think it was?
It was
No,
shared,
no,
that's
they've
shared.
used there've been others used for the housing grants, but,
Right.
Yeah.
Shared.
Alan Smith did the, grant preparation that, that we didn't follow through with for the, for the zoo,
What is it?
for the conservation park. They worked with us, I think that was a $22,000 that we chose to forego. But they did they're, again, close by, very qualified. I helped score, and I think maybe Councilmember Latham scored the.
Yeah, Monica, you and I scored it.
Can we get a motion then to approve the grant writing agreement for the city center project?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Are there more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none. Vote unanimously. Did any of the council members get a chance to read the minutes of July 31st work session and the call meeting of July 31st?
I've not read them.
I have not read them.
Yeah, I'm gonna do
I
that.
have not.
Yes, sir, they were placed at your desk this morning for you guys to review and
For
then
the-
be placed on the regular meeting agenda,
Okay.
along with the minutes from the August 10th meeting will be on the next agenda.
Is there anything else? Call in?
Mr. Mayor, we need to wait about 2 minutes, because there is a delay.
And
Just
David,
a
I'm gonna
moment of caution.
I'm gonna test ring that phone, just to make sure.
Got it. All right, so I set my timer for 2 minutes, if we would,
Can you
Let's
announce
go
that
over.
number, David?
excuse me? 706, 707. Ken, last four. 8801. Is that you again? Good morning. Good morning. You want to address,
Hello.
you want to address the mayor and council?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
This is Elizabeth Bell, and I'm calling in to ask a couple of questions about the proposal from the planner's office for these nodal developments. I wrote in at the last mayor and council meeting requesting that these matters be referred to the HPC for review, and nobody ever answered the letter or responded to that issue, either after the meeting or today. It's as if it's completely ignored, and it's a pretty legitimate comment on behalf of people who live in the historic district. And so I would like to ask again that this matter be referred to the HPC for review. Our National Register designation is very important, and our ordinances give the authority to HPC to monitor that and make sure the integrity of the district is protected. And so I would like to request once again that this nodal proposition be, particularly as it would apply to the historic district be referred to HPC for review. We all deserve that. The city deserves that, and the people who live there deserve that. And we also deserve a response when we request things like this. And when that referral is done, I would further request that all the intersections within the National Register district be mapped, because they have the responsibility for the integrity of the district as a whole, and they wouldn't be able to give any opinion about that or make any determination without reviewing the impact on the entire district. So I would appreciate the courtesy of somebody even responding to this request from a member of the public. And I would further request that you take that action to protect the district that does provide, as has been well substantiated, $50 million to the city every year. It deserves protecting, and it deserves your help. And on a different note, unless you'd like to go ahead and respond to that right now.
I think we have Ken going to respond to that.
Yes, so because this was just a study, and the mayor and council had not.
I can't hear you because I'm on the phone. So should I unmute now?
I'll tell you what, I'll just come up to the phone so you can hear me, and there's a speaker, microphone here too. So the mayor and council was just studying this and had not given direction to move forward with this, to send it to planning commission. So it would have been not right for the preservation commission to look at it, because we didn't know if this is something mayor and council would be looking at. If I understood correctly today, they said, please proceed with this, which means it will go to planning and zoning, which also means the HPC will look at it.
Well, wait a minute. How do we know that the HPC will look at it? They just provided that it should go to P&Z.
Well, it is a planning and zoning commission. That is their purview. The HPC can comment on it, but it is the planning and zoning commission's purview.
Well, can or might or could isn't really requesting that from HPC. So, you know, how do we know?
Ms. Bell,
that
I just said that the HPC will look at it. I didn't say can or might or should.
I beg your pardon?
The HPC will take a look at this.
So is that okay with the council? I mean, I don't understand where the authority lies.
That's the procedure, sir.
What?
It's not the procedure. HPC is looking at this because they choose to look at it. Staff will take it to them. As Ken said, the purview is with the planning commission because it's a zoning matter. But the council is directing staff to take it to the preservation commission for their review and comment, opinion.
Is it, that's done? Council is directing that?
We are, Ms. Bell.
Thank you very much. And will all the intersections be mapped? Because they can't really comment on it unless all the intersections in the district are mapped.
I think that'll be taken into consideration. The Preservation Commission, there are many intersections in the city, and this doesn't apply to very many of them. So I think when staff takes this report to the Preservation Commission, then they can request further information if they see the impact of it.
The HPC will be allowed to request mapping of further intersections in the district?
They can request anything they'd like to request of staff. It'd be up to them to figure out what information, if they see fit to see further information, then they can certainly make that request.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And on a separate and different point, from the full council meeting at the last time, I would like to request that, but when you start these meetings, you announce who is in the room, because at the last regular council meeting, the public was told that it would only be live streaming and that public would have to comment by phone, but in fact, a member of the public, Dick Schmidt, was in the room the entire time. And so I'd just like to know who's in the room, who's allowed to be in the room and who's not allowed to be in the room, because there are open meeting laws in effect for every one of your meetings.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
It seems like if they apply to one, they should apply to all, particularly somebody who has a dog in the fight. It's got a client who wants these splits.
Thank you,
That's
ma'am.
what we said.
Yep, thank you.
Hang out another minute if you will, so you get another call.
No, David. No.
So if someone were to have called during Ms. Bell's comments, they would have,
We would have heard it. This thing, we
Yeah.
can't turn it off. There would have been a beep
because they're
behind us.
instructed to wait, but if they're watching it, they won't know when
You're
she's
getting
done.
you're getting a call now, so. Good morning. Would you like to address the mayor and council?
I would. Good morning, David. This is Celia Murray. I just want to ask or maybe request that the council reconsider Zoom meetings.
She I'd have to reconsider.
How do you mean reconsider Zoom meetings? You do,
Well-
do both simulcast or boxcast and Zoom?
Well, I'm suggesting that it's Zoom where we can actually hear and see who's speaking more clearly. I do a lot of Zoom meetings, and I do think that if Zoom is good enough for the Georgia Supreme Court and for all of the Superior Court, it should be good enough for the mayor and council meeting. And Zoom does allow much clearer conversation. I've been listening to this since the work session, and I can hear about half of what's said because people lean back from their microphones. But if you're on Zoom, you're speaking right into your computer. You can also see more clearly who is speaking, and it allows for interaction. And I would just remind the mayor and council that this is a participatory democracy, and public comment is important. And I know that in the past there have been issues with gaveling the meeting closed, not accounting for that 60-second delay for people to come in or call in comment.
Yes,
I
yes,
assume it's
ma'am.
just
We acknowledge that that happened, and that's the reason we're still here now. That was a mistake, and that's been corrected.
It is very difficult, though, to still hear. I heard very little of what Bryce had to say, very little of what Mom had to say, and I don't know if it's because they're too far away from the microphone, but they're certainly off camera, so I can't even see to understand whether they're speaking into the microphone or not. And I just suggest to you that Zoom is a much better vehicle for conducting these meetings.
Well,
It gives the public.
We do in Boxcast because it goes up on the website. And again, the audio, I don't know if you heard this part, we're going to add a camera, that where the speaker will be seen, we can split the box and whatnot. And we're working on the audio all the time. So, we appreciate, and I think council members here have gone back and watched from the website, so they recognize that it's a challenge sometimes to hear everything, and we're all trying to do better.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. And let me ask you, what is the procedure going to be if someone has a particular subject that they want to address the mayor and council on for coming in person? Obviously, we have to notify, or members of the public would have to notify you in advance to do that, so that they could even gain entry to the building, but is
Yeah,
how far?
for the zoning hearings, they've agreed to in person, and the room will be filled, whatever its capacity is, and then others can wait. The in-person comments, for the public hearing is going to be accommodated. At least for the zoning hearings and others on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. And on that case-by-case basis, what is going to be the procedure? Does a member of the public just show up and say, I would like to address this hearing, and someone at the door makes that decision? So whether they're allowed in or not?
Yes, I think it can be done either way. Certainly, if you know ahead of time that you want to address the council in person, that then notifying the city clerk in advance so that that can be known. And then also if someone comes in, we can certainly look to accommodate. We're just trying to limit the numbers in as much as possible right now.
I understand that, and I certainly appreciate that in this time of COVID, but I do want to also maintain the public input into these meetings.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
and all the council and the mayor are nodding exactly. The council's never tried to cut off public comment.
All right, well, I appreciate that, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you all soon.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
If I could just reiterate what I said earlier, excuse me, I'm choking in here. I agree with Ms. Murray. I think the best method, I've said this before, I think you know where I stand, is the GoToMeetings. She mentioned Zoom, our city contract with GoToMeetings. I think it's the best way for us to have our meetings and have the public involved at the same time.
Can you have,
All the city commissions do it. Ed's run a bunch of them with DDA.
they work, for a small group, they work okay, but if we're gonna go out to the public entirely, how do you do that?
Well, you can,
Well,
there's not a limitation how many people can be
well,
on.
there's a limitation on who can manage this. We have one person managing all the IT for the meeting, and they're doing the simulcast, which is what we're tied to as far as what we do. That is recorded and put on the website for anybody to see after that. I don't know whether we did Zoom or whatever we did before, and because, let me take this and then we'll make some other comments. You have the mayor and council if you'd like to make a comment.
Hi, this is Carol Winslow. I would like to comment on the meetings being open to the public, and I apologize if I am repeating something someone else said because I put the audio down when I started calling in, and then when the phone wasn't answered, I went back to it, and I think my concerns may have already been addressed. I cannot hear everything that is said in this public meeting when you use the live stream method. The GoToMeeting method seems to work much better. I hear people speaking outside of the screen, and I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're staff, can't hear what they say. Certainly cannot respond to it because I can't hear it and I don't know, what it's about. Sometimes in a meeting, someone will say something that causes me to want to respond to that, and that may not be what is supposed to happen in a zoning meeting, but it is what happened at a public meeting. And I would like to be able to continue to do that. I'm very much a pro-growth person, and I believe that Madison can do really well with good guidance. And I would like to continue to participate in my local government, but the method that you're using doesn't allow that. And, this is a constitutional issue for me, and I really hope that you will look at using something that actually works. And hopefully before you make zoning decisions, which are so critical. So thank you for your attention this morning. And again, I apologize if I've repeated something someone else has said. I don't know because I can't hear it. It's not real time. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Were you gonna say something, Ken?
I was just gonna say that if you wanna use GoToMeeting, then you can't, that's hard to do with everybody in one room. So if you wanna use GoToMeeting, then y'all are doing it from your houses and participating that way. But once you get everybody into a room, it kinda kills the whole GoToMeeting format.
Well, that's true, and that's, I know DDA, like, all our commissions do that. You don't have to wear masks because you're at home. The only thing I don't like about it is people don't have a computer won't be able to participate, but they can anyway, even
But
with
do
the
you
live
think
streaming.
GoToMeeting would help? I mean, that would be completely counter to what these folks are saying.
How?
Exactly.
Because they want to be here and they want to hear everybody talking, and everybody being at home on computers talking is going to be way worse than Boxcast, in my opinion.
Right,
I
'cause
mean,
if
we
we-
need to improve speaking into the mic.
Right.
We got to get another camera, or the speakers need to be standing right here in the camera view. So this is a learning curve, everybody. I hope the public would recognize that this is all new to us 6 months in, and we did, live casting the meetings before COVID-19. We were doing that anyway, and we were going to have to perfect it or get it as good as we could anyway. So bear with us. Delay, the time delay for obvious reasons, they all present challenges. But, and we're gonna have some form of broadcasting the meetings and recording the meetings, whether we stay with that or something else. But I don't know how doing two at the same time is gonna be, is gonna be
Well,
chaos.
I
I
wasn't-
tried that one time and it was.
I wasn't suggesting two at one time. I
Yeah,
was suggesting
just go to one.
strictly.
Right.
But the biggest improvement we made today, David, in my opinion, is to allow some public here for the next meeting.
Right.
And that eliminates a lot
I think it's a
of-
kind of a hybrid solution.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we can improve the audio. I'm gonna go back and look at it. I think, again, when someone is addressing the council, they need to be within camera, whether it's a separate camera or the same camera.
Right.
Whether they need to be there, here, or wherever it is. So we can do better. We'll critique the meeting and go from there.
And of course, Councilmember Blanton said that, but it was the way last meeting that he looked at it online. Councilmember Blanton said when it was at home, not here at our last meeting, he did get a chance to look at it online, and he saw it pretty good. So maybe some see it, some don't see it, but
Yeah, I don't think GoToMeetings is a good idea. I mean, if they're saying they would like to come in and speak with us and we're at home, how is that working? So we need to just work on what we have and just try to talk closer into the mics. And we're not gonna, everybody's not gonna be happy anyway. I don't care which way we do it.
Yeah.
If we're at home, somebody's not gonna be happy. And if we're here, someone's not gonna be happy.
And
So,
Ken has just said this morning that he's gonna try to improve.
Yes. And we need more
We're
cameras.
gonna address
Just
some of
said
these
this morning,
things, and, if we have to get lapel mics for everybody, I mean,
Right.
whatever we need to do. We got another call coming in.
Maybe lapel mics will work because we'll have them closer to us.
Good morning. Would you like to address the mayor and council?
Yes, this is Elizabeth Bell. I'm getting this delayed broadcast about people talking about the call-ins saying they want to be there live and in person. That's a misinterpretation of what people are saying. They want to be able to participate contemporaneously. Live streaming does not allow that. What we're saying is Zoom or GoToMeeting allow contemporaneous participation in the meeting if you're not going to have public participation for everyone. You need to allow a possibility, a facility for contemporaneous participation, and Zoom and GoToMeeting allow for that. The method you're using now does not. Not only is it delayed 60 seconds, public comment is delayed throughout the work session and to the very end of a called meeting. You've made decisions and never even heard from the public. That there's a very basic difference. But to say that everybody calling in just wants to be in there live is a misinterpretation. I'm sorry how that rumor or misinterpretation got started, that's not correct. Frankly, I think you should put all of this off till we could be there in meeting. Be there in person? What is the big rush to get this done for a developer? But a misinterpretation about there being there people wanting to be there in person. We're simply asking that if you're going to do this virtually, you do it by a method that allows the public contemporaneous participation.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. Don't we always, just regular meetings with public in here, public comments come at the end of the meeting?
Exactly. Always.
That's the way it's always done?
That's the way it's always done.
And that's the way we're trying to do it now?
Exactly.
And I think the only exception is when there's a public hearing.
Correct.
And that's a specified time. Other than that, the contemporaneous comments do come at the end. That's how we've always done it.
There are times when in the meeting the public has and is allowed to call a point of order. That's completely impossible if public comment is not received contemporaneously.
No.
Okay, all of that's being considered. The separate method, the council discussed it, and you may have seen it by now, but a minute later, talked about using two different formats, and for a meeting where the council is assembled but the public's not here, go to a meeting may not be the best way to do that. It may be a difference of opinion, but we tried that before, but it's all going to be looked at, and improvements are going to be made.
So other options than live streaming will be considered
Yes, ma'am.
for the public.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have another meeting scheduled after
Okay.
this. Can we adjourn?
I think
You got one more call.
one more caller.
Good morning. You can address the mayor and council.
Hi, this is Carol Winslow again. My understanding as a non-lawyer and merely an observer is that point of order must be raised at the time that there is a question. It must be, or it's considered waived once you get to court. So that comment that point of order isn't allowed, I think is wrong. You should probably check with the city attorney about that. And also, I believe the Open Meetings Act, last time I looked at it, said that these emergency alternative broadcasts were good and legal as long as the broadcast was simultaneous. It has to be done at the same time, and I would assume that's for people to be able to raise the point of order. But again, I'm not a lawyer, and I can't.
I'm not certain
answer that
either, Ms.
for you.
Carroll, what is considered simultaneous, whether a 30-second or a minute delay would be considered that, because most, other than the Zoom and GoToMeetings and stuff, are pretty much real time. Otherwise, I don't know. I would think that, 2 days later certainly wouldn't apply, but 30 seconds or a minute, that's pretty close. But I understand you. Council understands your point, I think. I'm not speaking for them, but thank you for your call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. This meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.